The whistle blew, and just like that, two nations walked off the pitch, having gotten exactly what they wanted. It was June 25, 1982, Gijón, Spain. The sun was still high, the stadium was packed, and the game that had just ended would go down as one of the most calculated, cynical, and deliberately orchestrated results in the history of the World Cup. But here is the thing: FIFA knew, the fans knew, the players years later admitted it, and yet nothing was done, nothing official was ever said. The match stood, and for decades a quiet agreement seemed to exist that this story would simply not be told. You are about to hear it. The 1982 World Cup in Spain was a tournament of chaos and beauty. 32 years before VAR, 16 years before squad rotation became a science, this was football in its rawest, most political, most human form. Managers smoked on the touchline, defenders tackled with their elbows, and the group stage format had one catastrophic flaw that no one in FIFA had bothered to fix. In Group 2, the final match day was scheduled differently from the rest. West Germany and Austria were set to play each other, but critically, they would kick off at a later time after they had already seen Algeria's result against Chile. Everyone in the group knew exactly what scoreline West Germany and Austria needed to both advance. The schedule had handed them a map to the exit. All they had to do was follow it. Algeria had already played. They had beaten West Germany 2-1 10 days earlier, one of the most stunning upsets in World Cup history. Lakhdar Belloumi, the Algerian captain and one of Africa's greatest ever players, had orchestrated a performance that shocked the entire football world. The German press had called it an embarrassment. The players had called it a humiliation. And now, on the final day, West Germany faced Austria, knowing that a narrow German win, specifically by 1 or 2 goals, would send both European nations through and eliminate Algeria on goal difference. The match kicked off. West Germany scored in the 10th minute through Horst Hrubesch. And then, something strange happened. Nothing. For 80 remaining minutes, two of Europe's finest footballing nations passed the ball sideways, backwards, and into touch. There were no real shots, no pressing, no urgency. Players jogged where they had previously sprinted. Austrian goalkeeper Friedrich Concilia barely touched the ball. The German midfield, normally a precision machine, looked like men waiting for a bus. The Spanish crowd began to boo. Loudly, then louder. Algerian fans in the stands waved banknotes at the players, a gesture that needed no translation. A Spanish radio commentator, unable to contain himself, refused to describe the action and instead read out the rules of football to his listeners, sarcastically reminding them what the game was supposed to look like. The West German journalist Heribert Fassbender, covering the match live, called it openly a disgrace on air. He did not mince his words. He said what everyone watching already knew. This was not football. This was an arrangement. The final whistle blew. West Germany 1, Austria 0. Both teams advanced. Algeria, who had finished with more points than Austria, went home. In the aftermath, the Algerian Football Federation filed a formal protest with FIFA. They were right to. The protest was rejected. FIFA cited no rule violation. Technically, none had occurred. No pass had been illegal. No tackle had been foul. The two teams had simply chosen not to try. And the rulebook, in 1982, had no language for that. Mustafa Daleb, one of Algeria's most influential players, spoke about the match for years afterward. He called it a theft, not a defeat, a theft. His words carry a particular weight because Algeria had earned their place in that final calculation through genuine quality, through belief, through a performance against West Germany that had made the whole world stop and stare. The German football writer Ulrich Hesse, in his extensive history of the German national team, described the Gijón match as a wound that the German football establishment never fully confronted. Players from that West Germany squad gave interviews decades later that ranged from defensive to quietly ashamed. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, one of the greatest forwards of his generation, acknowledged in later years that the match was not something German football could be proud of. That is as close to an admission as the record ever got. Austria's players were even less forthcoming. Their manager, Georg Schmidt, gave a post-match interview so evasive it became a case study in studied ignorance. What makes the Disgrace of Gijón, as it came to be known, so remarkable is not just what happened on the pitch, it is what happened afterward. FIFA's response was not punishment, it was a rule change. Starting from the 1986 World Cup, all final group stage matches would be played simultaneously. The schedule that had made the Gijón arrangement possible was quietly retired. FIFA fixed the loophole without ever admitting one had been exploited. Think about that. An organization powerful enough to govern the sport across every continent on Earth chose to rewrite its own regulations rather than acknowledge what two of football's most storied national teams had done in broad daylight in front of 50,000 people on live television. The story was not suppressed by force. It was suppressed by institutional silence, by the absence of consequence, by the fact that the teams involved were powerful, European, and well-connected inside the corridors of world football governance. Algeria was none of those things in 1982. And yet, the Algerian players themselves, the ones who had every right to be furious, did something that deserves its own chapter in this story. In a gesture of extraordinary dignity, several of them attended the West Germany versus Austria match in Gijón that day. They watched from the stands. They saw everything. And they did not riot, did not storm the pitch, did not manufacture the confrontation that the injustice arguably warranted. They watched, and they remembered. Lakhdar Belloumi went on to be named African Footballer of the Year. The 1982 Algerian squad went home as heroes in their own country. In Algeria today, the team that beat West Germany is spoken about with a reverence that no administrative betrayal has been able to erase. But here is the twist that history almost buried. In 2004, West Germany and Algeria played a friendly match. It was not officially billed as an act of reconciliation, but those who organized it knew exactly what it was. The German Football Association quietly acknowledged the significance of the fixture. Players from the 1982 squads attended. There were handshakes, there were photographs. It was not an apology, but it was as close to one as football has ever managed. FIFA's rule change, made without ceremony or explanation, stands as the most honest thing any governing body said about Gijón. Rules do not change unless something breaks them. Something broke in that stadium on June 25, 1982, and the people with the power to name it chose instead to simply patch the crack and move on. You watch football today and you see simultaneous kickoffs on the final group day. You see VAR reviews. You see fair play tiebreakers. You see mechanisms designed to prevent exactly the kind of arrangement that buried Algeria in 1982. Every single one of those mechanisms exists because of what nobody was supposed to talk about. The whistle blew in Gijón. Two teams walked off, and the game that came after, the cleaner, fairer, harder to corrupt game you watch today, was built quietly and without credit on the injustice they left behind.